He betrayed her and vanished, leaving her with 6 mouths to feed and no way to survive. But when the Apache found her half dead on the plains, they didn't turn her away. Instead, they gave her something no one else ever had: a place to belong. The wagon broke down just west of Dust Ridge. Axles snapped clean through like a bone too thin to carry the weight it bore. By then, Clara Renly had already been walking for miles, through heat, hunger, shame, and silence. Her dress hung loose from weeks of skipped meals. Her boots flapped where the soles had given up, and her arms ached from cradling her youngest against her hip. Little Amos, barely 2, whimpered with sun-blistered lips and a belly long past empty. The other 5 children, Henry, Lydia, Marla, Daniel, and Josie, stood in a crooked line behind her, skin peeling, eyes glassy with confusion and thirst. Not one of them asked when Pa would come back. They already knew he wouldn't. Clara had known too, the minute she woke one morning to find only his boots by the door, his wedding ring left on the cracked basin, and half the provisions gone. He didn't leave a note, just a hole in their lives and a weight on her chest that never stopped tightening. She tried to make it work, patching what remained of the canvas top, stitching blankets together into makeshift shoes, selling her own wedding dress in a trading post for 1 bag of flour and a jug of stale water. But the land didn't care how hard she tried. The land was hard and cruel, and it took what it wanted. That day, she knew they couldn't go farther. The sun was unrelenting, the breeze gone, the canteen empty. Clara lowered Amos to the ground and fell to her knees. The children clustered close, their bodies pressing to hers like petals to a dying stem. She wrapped them all in her arms, shut her eyes, and whispered a prayer not for rescue, but for softness, for something easier than what they'd been given. She didn't hear the horses until they were nearly on top of her. Hooves thudded against the baked earth, muffled by dust. Clara looked up and braced for the worst. Bandits, traitors, men like her husband, smiling with lies and taking what they hadn't earned. But it wasn't men like him. It was Apache. 5 riders, quiet as ghosts, moved in a wide half-circle around the broken wagon. Their faces were unreadable, expressions carved in stone, but their eyes flicked from Clara to her children and back again. The leader dismounted, tall and broad-shouldered, his braids tied back with leather, a dark hawk feather tucked behind his ear. His gaze was sharp, but not cruel. Clara rose slowly, placing herself between the riders and the children. "We have nothing," she said, her voice cracked from thirst. "Nothing worth taking." The man didn't answer at first. He looked at her, then at Amos, who clung to her skirt, then to Henry, whose knuckles were white from gripping a broken doll he'd found 2 weeks ago. The man's voice, when it came, was low and calm. "Who did this to you?" Clara didn't speak. The shame was its own language. Her silence told the story. The man turned to the others, said something she didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. Help them. They brought water first. Clean, cool, pulled from leather skins. They didn't hand it to Clara. They gave it to the children. Let them drink first, with quiet patience, waiting as the little ones gulped and gasped and coughed. When it was Clara's turn, she nearly sobbed from the taste. Then they offered food, flatbread, hard cheese, a pouch of dry berries. Clara watched them the whole time, waiting for the moment it would change, the moment kindness would turn to payment. But it didn't. The leader spoke again. "I'm called Koa. You will come with us now." "You cannot stay here." Clara stared. "Why would you help us?" Koa's eyes didn't waver. "Because someone should have." She didn't have the strength to argue. She let them lift Amos onto a horse, helped the others mount, and climbed up behind Koa. Her fingers gripped his belt with trembling hands, not from fear, but because her body no longer knew how to carry weight without breaking. They rode for hours, past dry ravines and sun-split stones, until the land softened. Grass appeared, then trees, then shade. The Apache village was nestled in a shallow valley rimmed by red cliffs and desert bloom. Tents and earthen dwellings lined the edges, smoke curling from fires, children laughing as they chased dogs between the rows. The sight of it nearly dropped Clara to her knees again. Not because it was grand, but because it was real, because it was alive. The people watched as they rode in, some with suspicion, some with concern, most with curiosity. No one spoke to her at first. No one touched her, but no one turned away either. Koa brought her to a tent near the center, shaded by a tall cottonwood. "This is my mother's place," he said. "You will rest here." An older woman stepped out, silver strands woven into her braids, her hands weathered with time and skill. She said something in Apache to Koa, then turned to Clara. "I am Sate," she said in accented English. "I will care for you now." Clara didn't argue. She stepped inside, helped each child lie down on woven mats, and when Sate brought a cloth soaked in water and gently wiped the dust from Amos's face, Clara finally let herself cry. The first night passed in silence. No demands, no threats, just rest, just food, just hands that didn't push her away. She expected the change to come the next morning. It didn't. Instead, Koa returned with a bundle of fresh clothes and said simply, "The children will learn. You will too. We have space if you are willing." Clara hesitated. "What do you want in return?" He met her eyes. "We do not abandon the broken. That is not our way." And so she stayed. Each day began with work. The children were taken under the care of different families, welcomed like kin, taught slowly, patiently. Clara watched as Henry learned to make arrows. Lydia helped gather herbs with women who never shamed her for crying. Marla and Josie giggled beside other girls braiding reeds into baskets, and Daniel learned to ride a bareback pony with shouts of delight. And Amos, sweet Amos, clung to Sate, who carried him like her own blood. Clara learned to grind corn, to mend skins, to understand a language she'd once been taught to fear. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, her voice no longer trembled. But peace cannot exist without envy. Word spread beyond the valley. Traders who passed through whispered of the white woman raising children among the Apache, of her dignity, of her survival. Some called her a fool, others called her worse, and one of them told her husband. She didn't know he was coming, didn't know he'd returned to the territory, bruised and ragged from gambling losses and debts unpaid. Didn't know he'd heard her name in a tavern and followed it like a dog to meat. She didn't know until the night she heard a voice outside the tent, slurred and sharp. "Clara, you get out here right now." Her blood went cold. Koa was already outside, hand on the hilt of his knife. And Clara stood, because this time she wasn't alone. The night air was thick and still, the kind of silence that pressed hard against the skin like a storm was about to break. Clara stepped from the tent with her shawl clenched tight in both fists, the hum of insects and distant fire crackles replaced by the pulse in her ears. Her children remained inside, tucked safely under Sate's watchful eye, though Amos stirred restlessly in his sleep, whimpering as if he too could sense the trouble outside. Koa stood already between her and the voice that had once haunted her dreams, her husband's voice, not softened by shame or apology. It came sharp, slurred, and full of fury. Jeremiah Renly leaned crooked against a horse that wasn't his, boots covered in dust, coat torn at the shoulder, and hanging open over a pistol that looked more rust than steel. He reeked of sour whiskey, unwashed skin, and desperation. His eyes found Clara like claws, hungry, angry, confused. "Well, look at you," he spat, staggering forward a step. "Got yourself shacked up with savages, did ya? Took all of 2 months to forget you had a husband." Koa didn't flinch. He stood grounded, arms loose at his sides but eyes watchful. Clara stepped forward just enough for her voice to be heard without shouting. "You left us, Jeremiah. We buried you with every step we took toward survival. You don't belong here." Jeremiah's jaw worked like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. "You self-righteous whore," he snapped. "I didn't leave. I just had things to take care of. I was in a sin for you." "I still might have if you hadn't whored yourself out to some redskin." Koa moved then. Fast, fluid, like a storm cloud breaking. He didn't touch Jeremiah, not yet, but in one movement he stepped into the man's space, chest to chest, gaze locked like a warning written in flame. "No one speaks to her that way," Koa said, voice low and sharp as a blade. You leave. Now. Jeremiah's hand twitched toward his hip, but it was a bluff. His pistol hung limp and unused. His courage dissolved the second he saw he wasn't feared here. You think this is over? He hissed. You think you can steal my woman, my kids, and I just ride away like a whipped pup? Clara stepped around Koa then, not to protect Jeremiah, but to face him herself. Her voice came steady, clear. They were never yours to steal. You forfeited your place the night you vanished. You don't get to call me wife anymore. You don't get to call those children yours. Jeremiah looked like he might spit again, but something in her face, something that had changed since the plains, held him still. The fear was gone. She wasn't the woman he'd left barefoot and begging for flour. He turned to leave, spitting in the dirt beside the fire ring. This ain't over, he muttered. You'll see. He climbed on his horse, boots slipping in the stirrup, rode off into the dark, slower than he came. Silence settled again, deeper than before. Clara exhaled, her legs trembling beneath her, and Koa caught her elbow before she could drop. He won't come back, he said softly. Not while you have people to stand with you. But Clara wasn't sure. A man like Jeremiah didn't take defeat lightly, and she knew that his pride ran deeper than his fear. Inside the tent, her children watched her return with wide eyes. Josie whispered, "Was it him?" And Clara nodded. She sat and gathered all six in her arms, held them tight, and for the first time, told them plainly, "He will never hurt us again. I won't let him." The next weeks passed in tension. Not fear, tension. The Apache continued their rhythms, their work and rituals undisturbed, but there was an awareness in the village now. Extra eyes at the edge of the cliffs. More horses tied and ready. Word traveled faster. And through it all, Clara did not falter. She trained under Sate, learned to grind medicine root, how to sense sickness in a child's breath, how to blend sage and heat in a healing smoke. She carried Amos now on her back in a woven sling, freeing her hands to work. She braided Marla's hair, sewed moccasins for Josie, learned the pattern of Lydia's new laugh. And every evening, as the red sun fell over the cliffs, she watched Koa ride in from patrol and feel her breath steady. One afternoon, while helping Daniel string a new bow, Clara felt the weight of Koa's presence behind her. "Your hands are different now," he said. She looked down, palms calloused, knuckles nicked. They remembered their purpose. He hesitated. "You have a place here, not just as a guest, as family. You've earned it." She turned slowly to face him. "Why me?" Koa tilted his head. "Because you didn't give up. Because your children are stronger now, and that is because of you. Because our people believe in honoring strength." Clara swallowed hard. "You gave us life when we had nothing." He smiled, not with his mouth but with his eyes. "Then stay, as one of us." She said yes. But not an hour later, a scout returned breathless from the far ridge. Dust trails. Riders. 3 men. One of them, pale, drunk, and screaming for a woman. Jeremiah had returned, and he hadn't come alone. Clara stood tall as the village gathered near the fire. Koa turned to her. "You can leave. Hide with the children in the high caves. This is not your burden." But she shook her head. "It is. It always has been. I'll end it now." She kissed each child, murmured soft instructions to Sate, and stepped to the edge of the circle as the riders came into view. Jeremiah, grinning like a man who thought he held the winning hand, was flanked by 2 other cowhands, scruffy, armed, twitching with nerves. "I told you I'd be back," he shouted. "I came for what's mine." Koa stepped forward. "Nothing here belongs to you." Jeremiah laughed. "She's my wife." "She was," Clara called out. "You gave up that right. You left us to die." He raised his pistol, not to shoot, but to threaten. And the second he did, 3 arrows sang from the trees. Not one hit him, but all 3 landed inches from his boots. The message was clear. He froze. His friends shifted uneasily in their saddles. Clara stepped closer, hands trembling but held high. "You want to end this, Jeremiah? Then end it. Take your shot. But just know, if you miss, you won't ride out of this valley." Jeremiah stared at her, really stared. And for the first time, perhaps ever, he saw not a weak woman, not a burden or a failure, but something he couldn't touch. A woman who had risen from ruin, who no longer feared him. He lowered the pistol. "I'll go," he spat. "But you watch your back, Clara. The world don't treat women like you kindly for long." Clara smiled then, something soft and victorious. "No, but this place does." Jeremiah turned and fled, hooves pounding into the night. The next day, Clara was brought before the council. Not judged, welcomed. Koa placed a woven belt around her waist, red and gold, a sign of belonging. Her children stood beside her, proud and unafraid. From that day forward, Clara Renly was not a guest, not a stranger, not a woman abandoned. She was family. The ceremony that followed was not grand in the way of churches or town halls, but it was sacred, quiet, deliberate, and lit by the kind of fire that made stories last generations. Clara stood in a ring of flame and cedar smoke, her children close behind her, while Sate pressed ochre into the lines of her palms and whispered words in Apache that Clara couldn't understand, but felt. The air was thick with drum beats, slow and steady like a heart finding rhythm again. When Koa stepped forward with the ceremonial belt and fastened it around her waist, she didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and breathed deep. For the first time in her life, she was being claimed, not by man, not by debt or pity or need, but by a people who saw her and said, "You belong." After the ceremony, the fires didn't die. The village stayed awake long into the night, feasting, singing, children running in circles beneath a sky hung heavy with stars. Clara found herself laughing. Not the short, apologetic kind of laugh she used to stifle in Jeremiah's house, but real laughter, round and full. Her children laughed too. Henry tried roasted rabbit for the first time, Josie braided feathers in her hair, and Daniel chased Lydia with a carved stick, calling it his warrior's lance. Koa didn't say much that night, but he didn't have to. He stood near her often, his presence quiet but sure, the way a tall tree gives shade without asking for thanks. Once, Clara looked over and found Amos curled asleep in his arms, drooling on Koa's tunic, and Koa didn't seem to mind at all. Days after the ceremony, Clara took up more tasks within the village. She was assigned to the gatherers, women who moved together at dawn to collect herbs, berries, roots, and firewood. The other women didn't speak English fluently, and Clara's Apache was still thin and halting, but they smiled when she tried. They showed her how to walk softly, how to test berries with her teeth, how to wrap a bundle tight so it wouldn't scatter on the trail. For once, Clara didn't feel like a burden. She felt useful. She felt competent. One morning, as she walked beside Sate in a stretch of cedar-thick woods, they came across a tree bent low with its own weight, branches twisted down like an old woman's shoulders. "You feel that?" Sate asked, pressing her palm to the bark. Clara mimicked the gesture, confused. "It leans," Sate said, "but does not fall. Like women." Clara held her hand there longer than she meant to. Later that week, while collecting sage root near a dry creek, they heard a scream. A child's. Clara dropped her bundle and ran, feet pounding, skirt catching on scrub and briar, until she found the source. Marla, her daughter. Her foot had slipped between two rocks, and now she was wedged in tight. Her ankle twisted, pain etched across her face like someone had carved it there. Clara dropped to her knees. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "Mama's here." She called for the others, who came swiftly with rope and poles. Clara cradled Marla's head as Koa helped free the foot. The girl screamed again, and Clara nearly bit her own lip through. But soon the foot came loose, badly sprained but not broken. Koa lifted Marla gently and carried her all the way back to camp. That night, Clara sat beside her daughter's sleeping mat, brushing sweat-damp curls from the girl's brow. She looked up when Koa entered. "She'll be all right," he said. Clara nodded. You didn't have to carry her." "I know." There was a pause. "You would have done it for any child," Clara said. He looked at her, expression unreadable. "No, not any." The fire popped. "You love them," Clara said softly. "My children." Koa's gaze didn't waver. "They are strong, like their mother." Another pause. She whispered, "What about me?" He didn't blink. "Yes, you too." That night, Clara lay awake for hours, the weight of his voice lingering on her skin like touch. Over the next few weeks, the rhythm of their lives returned. Clara helped treat fevers with mint oil and hot stones. Daniel learned to track small game. Lydia asked if they could stay forever. Clara had no answer for that. But the world outside the valley didn't stay quiet. One afternoon, as Koa and another hunter, Elu, returned from a distant ridge, they brought troubling news. A white wagon train was camped just over the rise, and among them, a marshal, one who'd asked specifically about a woman named Clara Renly. Clara's chest locked up when she heard it. Her past, again, rising like smoke from a dying fire. "Jeremiah," she said, her voice dull. "He's trying again," Koa said. "And this time he's brought the law. What can we do?" Koa didn't hesitate. "We can prepare." The village council met that night. Sate argued that Clara and her children should flee to the high mountain caves to wait until the trouble passed. But Koa disagreed. "She's not running anymore," he said. "This place is hers now. We protect our own." Still, no one knew how far the marshal would go. And if the white law insisted, there was always the chance the army would follow. Clara lay awake that night, listening to every creak of the trees. Every owl's cry sounded like a warning. The next morning, Koa came to her tent and handed her a small, wrapped bundle. "What is it?" she asked. "Protection," he said. Inside was a blade, curved, clean, the handle wrapped in leather. "You don't think I'll need this?" she said. "I hope not," Koa answered. "But I've learned to trust the land more than men." 3 days passed. The marshals didn't come. Then, just after dawn on the 4th, Clara was gathering water near the creek when she heard the crunch of boots on stone. She turned and froze. 2 white men in dusty coats, badges, hands hovering near pistols. The taller one tipped his hat. "Mrs. Renly," he said smoothly. "We've been looking for you." Clara's hand clenched the water jug tighter. The second man smiled. "We understand you've taken up residence with the locals, that you've forgotten your husband." "I didn't forget him," Clara said. "I survived him." "Be that as it may," the taller man continued. "He's filed grievance. Claims you kidnapped his children. Says he wants them back. The law says he has a right to demand it." Clara's voice shook. "He left us, abandoned us with nothing. I saved those children. You can explain all that in town," the marshal said. "There's a court, a judge. You'll have your say, but we can't let you stay here." Behind her, a branch snapped. "Koa!" He stepped forward, arrow knocked, gaze hard. The marshals raised their hands. "We're not here to start a war." "Then leave," Koa said. "Not without her." The standoff held for seconds that felt like centuries. Then Clara stepped forward. "If I go," she said, "my children stay. They are not his. Not anymore." The marshals looked at one another. "Can't promise that." Clara's fingers wrapped around the blade Koa had given her. And Koa raised his bow a fraction higher. The trees around them moved. Dozens of silent figures appeared. Bows, spears, eyes like fire. The marshals backed up. "This isn't worth it," the shorter one whispered. But the taller hesitated. "We'll be back," he said. "With more." They turned and left. That night, Clara wept again, but not from fear. From fury. "This won't end," she told Koa. "They won't stop." He nodded slowly. "Then we end it first." The sky had turned the color of hammered pewter, and the scent of storm clung to the wind like smoke. In the valley, preparations began in silence. Not the frantic silence of fear, but the still, deliberate hush of people who'd endured fire before. The Apache moved with purpose, stockpiling arrows, scouting ridges, sending elders and the smallest children to higher ground. But there was no panic, only resolve, only the slow, steady beat of drums each night, calling the land to listen. Clara stood just outside her tent, braiding Josie's hair with trembling fingers, her eyes never leaving the tree line. Her children had sensed the shift before she'd spoken a word. Daniel, just 11, had begun sleeping with a hunting knife tucked under his bedroll. Henry and Lydia kept watch in turns from the nearby cliff. Even Amos, too young to understand, cried less often, and clung to her with quiet intensity. They knew the quiet before the thunder. Inside her chest, Clara's heart warred between fury and terror. She had told them she was done running. She had said it with fire in her throat and steel in her spine. But now, with war creeping up the ridgeline and her children sleeping in tents of deer hide, she felt something else beneath the strength. Grief. Grief for the life they might never reach. For the quiet mornings of safety that could be snatched away like autumn leaves in a gust. Koa approached near dusk, his face carved from stone, his arms dusted with powder from freshly cured leather. He handed her a wrapped bundle. Inside, a dress of deep crimson, embroidered with ochre thread and small bone beads. "It is what our women wear to stand before the fire," he said. "When they are warriors, too." Clara didn't speak. She ran her fingers along the fabric, each stitch tight and sure, and nodded. The following morning, scouts returned with news. The marshals had not left. They had gone east toward Fort Halloran, and they'd returned with soldiers. A dozen men on horseback. One wagon, armed. Jeremiah had come with them. Clara heard the report without flinching. But that night, when the fire burned low and her children slept curled against each other like puppies in a den, she walked beyond the circle of tents and let herself fall to her knees. The stars above shimmered without pity. "God," she whispered, "I have nothing left to give. But if they come for my children, I will give them everything." The next day, the village council met again. Koa stood tall among the elders, his voice calm but fierce. "We do not start wars, but we do not let them drag our kin from their homes." Sate placed her hand over Clara's. "If they come, we do not let them take you, or the children. We fight." Clara met her gaze. "I don't want them to fight for me." "You are not you anymore," Sate replied. "You are us." That evening, Clara sat her children down and told them the truth. Not everything, but enough. Some men may come. They may say we have to go with them. But you don't listen. You stay with the people here. With Sate. With Koa. Lydia's lip trembled. "Will you come too?" Clara wrapped them all in her arms. "Yes," she said, even though her voice cracked. "I'm not leaving you again. Not for anything." 3 days later, the riders came. They arrived mid-morning, the sun high and sharp, gleaming off the barrels of their rifles. They came with banners, with boots that trampled wild sage, with a wagon to take what they claimed. At their head rode a captain in blue, his eyes hidden beneath a brimmed hat, flanked by 2 marshals and one smug, familiar face, Jeremiah Renly. Koa stood waiting at the edge of the village. Clara beside him, wrapped in crimson, children behind them, archers hidden in the rocks. The captain dismounted first. His voice was polished, southern-bred. "We're not here to bring trouble. We've been told of a woman, a Mrs. Clara Renly, and her 6 children, that they've been taken against their will." Clara stepped forward. "I wasn't taken. I ran. I ran because that man," she pointed to Jeremiah, "left me to die in the dirt with 6 mouths to feed. These people saved us. He has no right to me, or my children." The captain's brow furrowed. "That's not the report we were given." Koa stepped up beside her. "You were lied to." Jeremiah dismounted then, swaggering as though he still owned something. "She's my wife. Those are my kids. I just want them back. I'll treat her right this time. Swear it." Clara's eyes filled with tears, not from fear, but rage. "You beat us. You left us for dead." The captain turned to Jeremiah. "Is that true?" Jeremiah's mouth opened, closed. He sneered. "You gonna believe a savage whore over your own blood?" The crack of Koa's palm across Jeremiah's face rang out like a rifle shot. Jeremiah staggered back, stunned. The soldiers raised their rifles. The Apache archers rose from the cliffs. The captain froze. "Nobody fire," he barked. "Nobody." Clara stepped forward, heart thudding like a drum. "Let me speak," she said, and though her voice shook, it carried. "I was born Clara Jessup, became Clara Renly the day Jeremiah's mother forced a ring on my finger. I was 16. By 17, I had a baby. By 25, I had 6 and bruises no one asked about. He left, didn't ride off for work. He vanished. I buried him in my mind and walked across the plains until I collapsed in a campfire in this valley. These people didn't ask what I'd done to deserve suffering. They gave us shelter, food, peace. They gave my children childhood. She turned slowly, her gaze sweeping the soldiers. You want to take me back? You want to drag my children onto that wagon? You'll have to look each one in the eye and tell them that the law believes a drunken man's rights are more important than their safety, than their happiness, than their lives. No one spoke, not for a full 30 seconds. Then Josie stepped forward. She held a feather in one hand and her mother's fingers in the other. She's our mama, Josie said, and we already got a home. Koa stepped beside them. Sate too. Then one by one, the Apaches stepped out of the shadows. No weapons raised now. Just eyes, faces, truth. The captain looked at Jeremiah. We were sent for a retrieval. But this isn't retrieval. This is theft. Jeremiah growled. She belongs to me. The captain turned. No, she doesn't. He mounted his horse again. We're leaving, Jeremiah shouted, but no one listened. A soldier jerked his reins, leading his horse behind the others. Jeremiah tried to follow, but Koa blocked his way. You show your face here again, he said, voice low, and you will not walk out. Jeremiah spat, but it landed in the dust. He slunk away, stumbling behind the soldiers like a kicked dog. The moment the riders vanished from sight, Clara crumpled to her knees. Her children rushed in, wrapping their arms around her, weeping into her shoulders. Koa stood over them, hand on her back, his silence louder than any vow. That night, the fire burned until dawn. Not for mourning, but for victory. The next morning, Clara woke before the sun. Her hands were sore from holding, her voice raw from weeping, but her heart beat steady. She stepped from her tent into golden morning light and saw her children still asleep, tangled together. She saw Koa tending the horses, Sate preparing roots, the village humming with quiet life. She belonged here, not because they made space for her, but because she had earned it. Later that day, she gathered her children and walked with them to the edge of the cliffs. They looked down at the long trail where soldiers had vanished. Why did he hate us so much? Henry asked quietly. Clara didn't answer right away. Then she said, because we stopped needing him. That night, as the wind shifted warm and the fire cracked steady, Koa carved another figure, small, precise, and strong. When he handed it to Amos, the child laughed for the first time in days. Clara sat beside Koa. Was that the end? She asked. He shook his head. No. But it's the beginning of something else. She looked down at her hands, calloused, sun-browned, strong. Yes, she whispered. It is. The summer that followed should have been a time of peace, but peace was never a still pond. It rippled, sometimes sweet, sometimes aching. For Clara, it was both. The law had left, but the shadow of what might return never fully lifted. Still, life filled in the cracks. The village thrived beneath golden skies. Children ran barefoot through sage and creeked, and Clara began to feel something she hadn't allowed herself in years. Permanence. The days were long and full. Clara's mornings were spent helping in the gardens, learning to coax strength from dry earth and thin soil. By midday, she and Sate would gather the younger children under a cottonwood tree to teach them words, stories, stitching. Lydia had taken to song, her voice bright and pure, while Josie sat often by the fire carving wooden dolls. Amos toddled wherever Koa was, always with sticky hands and wide eyes. Daniel and Henry, taller now, began learning the bow from Koa himself. They worked hard, sweat-drenched and sore, but Clara saw something in their faces that had long been missing: pride. Koa remained steady at her side. He did not speak of the standoff again, nor of Jeremiah. He moved through the village with a quiet ease, never pressing, never retreating. But Clara saw it in his actions. The way he checked the children's feet at night for thorns. The way he taught Josie to make stronger thread. The way he sat beside Clara each night as she folded blankets, always carving something in his lap, always near. He never said, I love you, but Clara began to wonder if he ever needed to. One day in late July, as Clara walked back from the lower spring with a basket full of wet linens, she found Sate waiting near her tent with an expression unreadable. "There's a visitor," she said. Clara's heart seized. "Not danger," Sate added. "A woman. Alone." Clara dropped the basket and followed. At the edge of the camp, near the old post where traders once tied their mules, a woman sat on a stone. Older, white, with a tight bun and worn dress. Her back straight, her hands folded like she was trying to appear calm, though her eyes betrayed the storm inside. Clara stopped a few paces away. The woman looked up. "Clara Jessup?" Clara nodded slowly. The woman stood. "I'm Abigail Dunne. My daughter, Meredith, was married to your husband's brother, Matthew Renly." Clara swallowed hard. She hadn't heard the name in years, but the bitterness that rose in her throat was sharp. Abigail wrung her hands. I heard what happened. That Jeremiah went looking for you. That the army came." Clara's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" The woman looked ashamed. "My daughter is dead. Fever. Months ago. Left behind 2 small boys. My grandchildren. I couldn't care for them. I thought maybe Jeremiah would, but now I know what he is." Clara felt her breath falter. "I came to ask," Abigail said quietly, "if you would take them." Clara reeled back. "I already have 6. They'd be safe here," Abigail said, her voice cracking. "You made something of your life. I see it. And they have no one left." It wasn't a plea. Not really. It was a surrender. Koa stepped up beside Clara then, having heard enough. "Let us meet them," he said. They came from behind the ridge, holding hands. 2 boys. One about Amos's age, the other perhaps 5. Dirty, thin, but eyes bright with curiosity. Clara didn't move at first. Then she knelt. "What are your names?" she asked. The older one looked down. "Caleb." The younger one sniffled. "I'm Meili." Clara reached out, slowly. "Come here, Eli." He stepped forward. She lifted him gently into her arms, and the child wrapped around her like a vine starved for light. Behind her, Koa touched her back. "They are already yours." That night, Clara told her children. She expected hesitation, resistance, but Lydia simply said, "They can sleep in my tent." Daniel offered his old blanket. Josie made space in the line of dolls. No one questioned it. They knew what it was to be unwanted. Within a week, Caleb and Eli had become part of the rhythm. Clara didn't know how she'd find enough food, enough thread, enough hands, but somehow, the village always made room. Always had. But the quiet couldn't last forever. One morning, as Clara stirred cornmeal over the fire, Koa approached with a tight look on his face. "A message rider came," he said, "from the south." "What is it?" "War," he said simply. "The government's ordered another removal. Further tribes east of us, pushed off their land." Clara's stomach turned. "What does that mean for us?" Koa didn't answer right away. "There will be patrols. Strangers. Soldiers. If they see us, if they know we sheltered you, took in your children." Clara stood slowly, the spoon dropping from her hand. "They'll call it rebellion," she whispered. Koa nodded. The council met that night. Fear rippled through the village like a sickness. Some wanted to leave, to vanish into the high rocks, into desert where soldiers wouldn't follow. Others wanted to fight, to send a warning before harm arrived. Sate looked at Clara. "You have the most to lose." Clara met her gaze. "No, we all do." Then she turned to Koa. "What do you want?" His jaw tightened. "I want to stay, but not if it means your children bleed for our choice." Clara's eyes burned. "They're not separate. Not anymore." The council decided to remain, but they would prepare. Scouting increased. Fires were watched carefully. Children were taught to disappear into the brush at the first sound of boots. One afternoon, while walking with Caleb and Eli to gather berries, Clara spotted movement on the ridge. A glint of metal, then another, then 5. Soldiers. She dropped the basket and pulled the boys into the trees, covering their mouths with trembling hands. She counted boots. 6 men, then 7. They passed without pause, heading west. Not to the village, but close. That night, she told Koa, "They didn't see us." "Not this time," he said. "But they will. Eventually, he walked her back to her tent, stood at the entrance a long while. If they come, we leave together. I won't stay if you're not safe. Clara looked up at him. And if they take us anyway? His expression didn't change. Then they learned what it means to try. Later, as the fire flickered low and the wind whispered through pine, Clara lay awake, her children breathing soft all around her. She rose, stepped outside. Koa sat on the stump, carving again. She sat beside him, not speaking for a while. Then, did you ever think you'd be part of this? He shook his head. No, me neither. She leaned against him. I don't know what we are. He didn't answer. But I know this, she whispered. You're the only place I've ever felt safe. He didn't touch her, but he didn't move away either. That night, she dreamed of fire. Not destruction, but warmth. Home, her arms full of children. And a man with strong hands whispering that she didn't have to carry it all alone anymore. The days that followed became a blur of preparation and pretending everything was normal when the children played near the creek, when they gathered sage, when Clara sang lullabies over a pot of stew she hoped would stretch one more day. But there was nothing normal about the way Koa kept his bow nearby now, or the way Sate's face tightened every time the wind shifted from the south. Soldiers had passed, yes, but they hadn't been alone. Tracks had been found days later, boot prints too close to the edge of the village, too deliberate to be random. We've been marked, Koa said one evening as he stoked the fire. Someone's watching. Clara didn't ask how he knew. She could see it in his eyes, the tension that had returned to his jaw, the long moments he spent at the edge of the ridge, unmoving like a shadow. The village had begun to quiet. Joy felt too risky now. Even the children seemed to feel it. They played close to the tents, never wandered far, and Josie began sleeping with her little hand curled around Clara's wrist. One night, Clara found Caleb standing outside the tent, staring toward the trees. Can't sleep? She asked. He shook his head. Dreams come too loud here. She knelt beside him. What do you see? Not what I see, he whispered. What I feel. Like something heavy's coming. Like Mama felt before the rain came, when the creek would flood. Clara pulled him close. You're not wrong. He looked up at her. Will we have to run again? She hesitated. Maybe, but not alone. Not like before. He nodded like he already understood. Caleb always had. 2 nights later, a rider arrived, exhausted, dust-covered, and bleeding from a shallow cut near his temple. He'd come from the eastern camps. A scout. Not Apache, but allied. His news came in gasps, but the message was clear. A patrol had intercepted another village just like theirs. Half taken, half scattered. 3 children missing. Women detained. No charges, just silence. Sate stood when he finished. It will happen here. Koa nodded. Within days. No one argued. That evening, Clara helped Sate pack medicines into wrapped satchels, her fingers moving in stiff rhythm while her mind spiraled. All her life, she had been running, reacting, surviving. But now her children had roots here. They had laughter. They had Koa, and she was tired of running. After the children were asleep, Clara stepped outside to find Koa sharpening a blade, his face unreadable. I want to stay, she said quietly. He didn't look up. We might not get to choose. She knelt before him, her voice steady. Then let's make them take something back with them. He paused, set the blade aside, looked at her. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm not hiding anymore, Clara said. Not in tents, not in names. Not behind the hope that the world will be kind if I'm quiet enough. If they come, we fight. Not because we think we'll win, but because I want my children to see me stand. He reached out, brushing her cheek with the back of his hand. Then we fight. That night, the council finalized their plan. Those who couldn't fight would slip through the northern pass before first light. Clara's younger children among them. Amos, Eli, Josie. Sate would lead them through the mountain trail and wait beyond the stone arch, near the high river. Clara didn't want to let them go, but she knew what had to be done. Daniel and Henry both refused to leave. They're my sisters too, Henry said. Daniel just stood silent, holding the bow Koa had made him, his shoulders already square like a man grown. Clara's heart cracked a little, but she didn't stop them. They made it through the night. One more. But dawn brought smoke, not from their fires, but from the south, from soldiers. They came slowly, methodically. A dozen men, 3 wagons, rifles drawn. The Apache didn't wait. The first volley was a warning. Arrows loosed into the air, whistling past helmets and kicking dust from the path. The soldiers flinched but didn't retreat. Instead, the captain raised his hand and called out, "Stand down. You're harboring fugitives. Return the woman known as Clara Renly and the children in her care. No one else needs to suffer." Koa stepped forward. "She belongs to no one." The captain gave a signal. Gunfire erupted. The fight was brief but brutal. Clara had taken cover behind a low wall of stone. Daniel beside her, arrow knocked. Henry ran messages between tents like a ghost, ducking and sliding through dust and smoke. Koa fought like a man with nothing left to fear, his blade flashing, his arrows singing. Clara didn't know how long it lasted. All she knew was the screaming, and then silence. When the dust cleared, for soldiers were down. The others had fled, dragging their wounded, leaving weapons behind. 2 Apache warriors had fallen. 1 elder wounded. Koa bled from his shoulder, but stood tall, eyes never leaving the retreating patrol. They didn't cheer. There was no victory in surviving an attack like that. Only breath. Only aching. Clara rushed her boys. Daniel had a cut across his forearm, shallow but bleeding. Henry's hands trembled as she grabbed them. "We're alive," she whispered over and over, holding them tight. "We're alive." Satay returned with the others by nightfall. The children came running, eyes wide with questions. Josie clung to Clara so hard she couldn't breathe for a full minute. "Did you win?" Josie asked. Clara looked at Koa. "No," she said softly. But they didn't win either. The elders gathered again that night. It was decided they would move. Not run, but migrate. Further into the canyonlands, past the old water caves where no maps reached. Clara agreed without hesitation. They packed under moonlight. Quiet. Swift. The village scattered like seeds on the wind, but not broken. As they moved, Koa rode at Clara's side, one child asleep across his lap, the others trailing behind in a wagon patched with hide and rope. The moon was silver above them, the sky clear. No gunfights, no shouting, just the soft creak of wagon wheels and the breath of a people still standing. They stopped near a stone basin shaped like a bowl, ringed with wild mint and coyote brush. Here, the Apache had once camped a generation ago. Here they would begin again. Tents rose, fioli, wounds bandaged, and life returned. That evening, Clara sat by the new fire, her children curled around her, and watched Koa carve by firelight again. She reached over, took the piece from his hands. A bear this time, strong, watchful. "Thank you," she said. He looked at her. "For what?" "For choosing me. For not letting them take me back." Koa stared into the fire. "You chose yourself first. I just followed your lead." She laughed then. A deep, sudden laugh that startled even herself. It wasn't the laugh of a woman who had won. It was the laugh of a woman who had survived everything meant to break her and somehow ended up freer than she'd ever been. She reached over, took his hand, and this time, he didn't pull away. The weeks that followed unfolded with a quiet resilience, like grass creeping back through scorched earth. No one called it peace. They were too wise for that. But there was space now, space to breathe, to mourn, to stitch the world back together by hand. In the hidden basin beneath the red cliffs, the Apache rebuilt in silence and sweat. Clara and her children were among them. Not visitors, not guests, family. The new camp wasn't much yet. Canvas stretched over poles. Clay pits dug for cooking. The water nearby was shallow and copper-tinged, but it ran clean. Satay led the women in medicine and food, teaching the young girls to recognize healing weeds and poisonous blooms. Clara followed her, absorbing everything. Her fingers, once suited only to patching torn shirts and hauling children across dust-choked plains, now knew how to mash root in a salve and weave willow bark in a basket strong enough to carry coals. The children adjusted faster. Lydia returned to singing almost at once, her voice brighter here, somehow, less guarded. Josie spent hours carving dolls and animals from dried cactus root. Amos and Eli became inseparable, darting around the edges of the tents like wild pups. Caleb remained watchful, always near, always listening, always one question away from something too big for his small body to carry. But it was Daniel and Henry who changed the most. They worked with the older boys, training each morning with bow and spear, running drills that left their legs rubber and backs blistered. They didn't complain. Clara saw it in their posture, in the way they squared their shoulders, stood straighter around the elders. Koa watched them carefully, offering praise only when earned, pushing them harder when they grew lazy. He was their teacher, yes, but something more. Clara couldn't name it at first. Then she heard Henry, one morning before sunrise, murmur quietly to Amos, "Papa says we have to leave earlier tomorrow." Clara froze. "Papa." The word hung in the air long after the children moved on. She asked Koa about it that night. After the fire had gone low, the children already asleep in their tent. "They called you that," she said simply. Koa didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "I didn't ask them to." "I know." He turned to her, and in the orange light, she could see the hesitation, the humility that lived under all that stillness. "Is it wrong?" She reached over and took his hand. "It's the first thing that's felt right in a long, long time." He exhaled softly, and for once, she felt the full weight of his heart in that breath. By the fourth week, the scouts returned from the edge of the lowlands with troubling news. Another patrol, not near, but headed this way. The government hadn't forgotten them, would never forget what had happened in the high camp. The elders met under the stars. Sate's voice was sharp. "We are not refugees," she said. "We are not cowards, but neither are we fools." Another elder, Wapaha, agreed. "We cannot fight again so soon. Not with half our people still wounded. Not with our youngest barely walking." Clara stepped forward then, her eyes calm but fierce. "They're not coming for all of us," she said. "They're coming for me, for my children." Silence rippled through the circle. "If I go," she continued, "they may stop." Koa stood immediately. No, Clara didn't flinch. "Let me speak." He held her gaze, jaw tight, but said nothing more. "I won't give myself to them," she said. "Not again. But I also won't let them erase all of this. If they want me so badly, fine. Let them see me. Let them hear me. But on my terms." The next morning, she dressed in her finest woven shawl, braids tight, chin high. Lydia painted her face with berry and ash, while Josie tucked a stone talisman into her mother's belt. Koa saddled the horse. "I'll ride with you," he said. She nodded. Daniel and Henry stepped forward, bows slung over their backs. "No," she said. "We're not children," Daniel argued. "You are mine," she said, and hugged them both so tightly she feared she'd snap their ribs. The ride was slow, deliberate. Koa kept to her right, his knife strapped at his hip, eyes scanning constantly. When they reached the open slope above the river bend, the soldiers were already there. 8 of them, uniforms crisp, faces unreadable. Clara rode straight into their line of sight. Koa behind her, silent as a shadow. The captain stepped forward. "Same man from the last raid. You made it hard to find you," he said. "But nothing hides forever." "I'm not hiding," Clara said. The captain looked her up and down. "You were warned. Now you'll answer for harboring fugitives, for resisting removal. You and your whole camp." Clara laughed, sudden and sharp. "Is that what this is now? My camp?" He bristled. "You're under arrest. Then come take me." He took one step forward, and the wind shifted. From the canyon walls, from the ridges and brush, from every shadowed path, Apache warriors emerged. Not attacking, just watching. Bows drawn, spears raised. Silent. Koa stepped beside Clara then, blade glinting. The captain froze. "You want to make war on women and children?" Clara said, voice steady. "Go ahead. But know this, every breath you take from us, we'll take 2 back." The soldiers didn't move. The captain's fingers twitched near his gun, then paused. He looked around, counted heads, and retreated. "We'll return," he said. "No, Clara said. You won't. He left. They didn't chase him. They returned to camp slow as one. That night, the village lit every fire. The drums began, low and deep, and soon the children danced. Clara watched Josie twirl, Lydia sing, and even Caleb smile. Daniel and Henry played rhythm with sticks. Amos fell asleep curled in Eli's lap, and Koa reached for her hand. They might come again, she said. Yes, but for now, he looked at her. We live. She leaned into him, heart full and breaking at once. The stars overhead blinked into life. No longer distant, no longer cold. They belonged here now, all of them. The fires burned low that morning, down to embers and ash, but the air was thick with the kind of silence that only follows a storm no one knows has passed or only paused. Clara stood alone at the edge of the ridge, watching the sunlight roll over the basin where her children still slept. The moment felt like breath. Half-held, too delicate to trust. She hadn't spoken much after they'd returned from the river standoff. No one had. The village didn't need words to understand what had been risked or what could still come. But the absence of war didn't mean peace had arrived. Not yet. Koa found her there just after dawn. He stood behind her, not pressing, just let her know he was there. They'll send someone else, she murmured, not turning. Yes, someone smarter. Or crueler. Yes. Clara finally turned, her eyes tired but fierce. Then what do we do? Koa didn't answer right away. He stepped beside her, let the sun touch his face. We live anyway. She almost smiled. It wasn't the kind of answer that calmed the storm in her chest, but it was the one that kept her standing. And maybe that was the point. You didn't wait for the fear to leave. You just stepped forward anyway, holding on to the hand beside you. Over the next few days, the village began preparing again. Not out of panic, but out of determination. Traps were reset, watch points reinforced. The children were taught again how to move silently, how to hide. Sate led daily gatherings of the women, weaving not only cloth and baskets, but knowledge. How to crush fever root, how to signal for help, how to survive if separated. Clara sat among them now, not as a visitor, but as one of them. She braided her daughter's hair in the morning, let Josie paint her cheeks in festival colors, helped Caleb build wind chimes from bones and beads. Her hands remembered tenderness now, not just defense, not just struggle. Still, fear lurked. It came late at night, when a twig snapped too close to the tents, when a hawk circled too low, when the wind shifted and brought scents that didn't belong. It came in the dreams of her children. Lydia began to talk in her sleep again. Henry woke, choking back tears. Daniel, brave Daniel, began sleeping by the tent flap with his bow clutched tight. Then, one afternoon, while Clara was gathering herbs near the stream, a stranger came. He wasn't Apache, not a soldier either. His coat was tattered, the kind of worn only the forgotten wear. He walked with a limp, dragging one leg behind him through the dust, but his eyes were sharp as flint. Clara was the first to see him. He didn't raise a weapon, didn't call out. He simply stopped 10 yards away and held out something wrapped in cloth. Koa appeared seconds later, silent and sudden, blade drawn. The man didn't flinch. I ain't here to fight, he rasped. I just wanted her to have this. Clara stepped forward slowly, eyeing the bundle. The man dropped it at her feet, then turned to go. She called after him. Who are you? He paused. No one who matters anymore. And then he was gone. She opened the cloth. It was a photograph, torn at the edges, faded, but unmistakable. Her children, all 6, years ago, back when they were still whole, back when her smile still reached her eyes. And next to her, in the image, him, David, the man who'd left her in the dirt with nothing but mouths to feed and grief to choke on. The man who'd run off with another woman and never looked back. Only, this wasn't the man from her memories. This version was older, thinner, sadder. The man in the photo had written something on the back. I was wrong. That was all. Clara sat down in the dust. She didn't cry. Not exactly. But the tears came anyway, burning tracks down her cheeks. Koa knelt beside her. He's dead, isn't he? She asked. Koa picked up the cloth, studied the torn edges of the image. Likely. Clara nodded slowly. I used to want to see him again, she said. To ask him why. To scream. To make him hurt the way I did. And now. She looked toward the hills. Now I don't need to. Koa didn't say anything. He didn't need to. That night, she burned the photograph. Not out of hate, but because she didn't need it anymore. She had new images now. New memories. Her daughter singing. Her son's training at dawn. Josie learning to track. Caleb smiling in his sleep. And Koa, standing beside her in every memory that mattered. Weeks passed. Then months. The soldiers never came. Not again. Whether because they forgot, or because they feared, or because they'd finally decided to let a mother and her children vanish into the folds of a land too wide to police, Clara never knew. She didn't ask. She just lived. The tents gave way to cabins. The children grew taller. Daniel shot his first deer. Lydia started writing songs. Henry fell in love with a quiet Apache girl named Molly, and Clara cried watching him place her woven bracelet on his wrist. And one spring morning, as the first shoots of green pushed through the red dust, Koa took Clara's hand and led her to the river bend. It was the same spot where he'd once said nothing at all, just stood by her side and let her decide who she wanted to be. Now he spoke. I have no blood heirs, he said. No children born to me. No family in the way the world understands it. But I have you. I have all of you. And if you'll have me, I'd like to name this place ours. Clara smiled. I thought it already was. He pulled something from his pouch. A ring. Simple. Bone and silver twisted together. No church, he said. No preacher. Just the sky. And the river, she added. And your children. Clara took the ring. Slipped it on. They didn't kiss. They just stood there, fingers laced, while the wind wrapped around them and the canyon walls held their silence. Later, at the evening fire, Daniel brought out a carved token and handed it to Koa. It was a figure. One of a woman and man, standing side by side. I made it from the old cedar stump, he said. Thought you two should have something. Koa took it carefully. Clara ruffled Daniel's hair, and the fire crackled on. That night, for the first time in what felt like forever, Clara didn't wake with dread in her chest. There were no footsteps outside the tent, no distant shouts, no sense that the world was hunting her still. There was only the breath of the children beside her, the arm around her waist, and the steady pulse of a heart she'd once thought she'd never trust again. She was still the woman left in the dirt, still the mother who'd buried her hope alongside her pride. But she was also something more, a part of a people who had chosen her, a protector, a wife. And for the first time in her life, she belonged.